Okay, welcome to the installation assistance video for the Fluidmaster PRO ECO bottom entry fill valve. We will discuss flush valve type, brief explanation, pre-installation settings, typical demonstration, and fine adjustments for the valve when installing and fitting. So to start, the flush valve type, it's an equilibrium style valve that works with the diaphragm in the head. It's fully adjustable in height, and EcoFil meaning it's a delayed fill action valve. So if we start at the bottom, obviously water comes in through here. At the centre of the stem we have an adjustable screw here which we can undo to adjust the height of the valve, locked in place with the collet that goes into half-inch incremental grooves. Inside this column you'll find we have this little white stem sticking out. With a pair of pliers we can remove this little stem. Inside there we have a filter and a restrictor. This filter and restrictor, you'll find in the box there is a high pressure restrictor which is indicated on the end of here, says HP. The one that is pre-fitted, factory fitted, is an LP version, which is for low pressure. This clips onto the filter like so, as with the high pressure, and simply pushes inside the stem like this. Now we must say that the filter must always be fitted. The difference between the low pressure and the high pressure restrictors, it says in the instructions that the low pressure should be fitted anywhere between 1 and 4 bar, and the high pressure should be fitted from 4 bar upwards. We must always say that in whatever circumstance you're using it, that the filter must always be fitted. In most instances the low pressure restrictor should cope. It is there to maintain the inflow of water, to make sure that the overflow in a cistern can cope with the inflowing water. That's what the restrictors are there for, and it helps keep the valve quiet. So that's in your inlet stem. For the valve you're replacing, you'll have a rough height use it as a guide to the valve for this valve that you're putting in. So in this case we're setting it with one not showing. That's setting the overall height of this valve to about 280 millimeters. From there you come up to the headworks. Inside here you've got the diaphragm which controls the water flow. Here you have your lever arm which is connected to the float. The float then is contained within the eco chamber itself, which is this part here. The design of this is to make sure that this float sits on top of the chamber. It's not designed to go fully inside, it's designed to sit on top. All of these valves are 100% tested before they leave the factory, so there should be no need to undo the nut and take the diaphragm out. If there are particularly dirty water instances and a lot of debris has got into the valve, as with every equilibrium style valve on the market, they are susceptible to dirt. So try and make sure that your water supply is clean, and when you remove the old valve we're not disturbing any debris or disturbing anything, and if we do, try and make sure it's as clean as possible. So the float is there inside and sits on top of the chamber and is free to move up and down. What we need to make sure is that this chamber, as you can see, it will slightly rock around like that, but we need to make sure that it's nice and square and there's clear gap all the way around the float so it moves up and down freely inside the chamber. Okay, so pre-installation settings. So we take it out of the box and you might find that this chamber is all the way down the stem like this, and the float's moving up and down like that. There's a quick tip really if we want to try and set it before we fit it to the cistern to make things a little bit easier and less fiddly when things are fitted inside the tank. We can push the chamber up and get it to roughly whereabouts we need it. Now in this instance what we're going to do is we're going to say that the top of the chamber, we're going to set that to roughly anywhere between 105 and 110 millimeters from the top of this chamber to the top of this cap here. So we'll set that to about 105, 107 millimeters from the top of there to there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this screw. Now this screw is your fine adjustment for your float adjustment, which ultimately sets your water level. What we'll do with that is we'll set that to around 20 millimeters. So you can see there, we're setting that to around 20 mil. Okay, so we've roughly set the overall height to about 280 millimeters. We've set the top of this chamber to the top of the valve to roughly 105 to 110 millimeters, and we've set this screw here to the top of this float here to around 20 millimeters. So what we then do is we'll fit it, normal circumstances, take the nut off the bottom and fit it to the tank. Now here we've got one that we fitted already to the tank. And what we'll do is we'll say now that you've fitted the valve into your cistern, you've connected your water supply, and now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the water supply on. So we turn the water supply on, nothing's happened. Okay, this isn't a faulty valve. What we've got here now is a bit of fine adjustment. So what we'll do now is we'll just turn this screw on the float to allow the water in. Turn it so we get a full flow. And as you can see now, the water is now filling the tank, and we'll allow that to fill. In this instance, you can see we've got the dual flush cable operated drop valve. You may have a siphon, you may have a different style of flush valve. It doesn't really matter what kind of flush valve you've got. The fill valve is a different entity. It's always going to fulfill the same purpose essentially. So as we can see here, the fill valve is filling and we've closed off. Now in this particular tank we've got 190 millimeters water line which we've filled up to. As we can see, the chamber is below the water level and the float has shut off. So what we'll do now is we flush the toilet. As we can see, the fill valve remains closed and then eventually opens, and that's your delayed fill. So that will then repeat that process to give you your delayed fill action every time you flush. The idea is that this chamber fills with water and artificially holds the float up to hold the valve closed until the flushing has finished. So if we just flush this now, what's actually happening is the tank is emptied. This chamber is holding some water which is holding the float up. It will slowly drain out of that chamber. This float will then slowly drop until it finally opens. Again, you might have to have a little bit of fine adjustment on this screw depending on your water pressure coming in, just to make sure that the valve is fully open to allow the lever arm to come off and allow the valve to open. So again, that will fill and flush each time. I hope this is of assistance and leads to a trouble-free installation in the future. Thank you very much.